Michael Rennie was ill the day the earth stood still, but he told us where to stand. And Flash Gordon was there in silver underwear. Claude Rains was the Invisible Man. Then something went wrong for Fay Ray and King Kong. They got caught in a celluloid jam. Then at a deadly pace, it came from outer space. And this is how the message ran. Science fiction, double feature. Dr. X will build a creature. See androids fighting. Brad and Janet and Francis stars in Forbidden Planet. Oh, 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 oh. At the late night double feature picture show. I mean, we had to start season 2 out somehow, so I thought,
God damn it,
that'd be appropriate.
Just full disclosure, Roy asked me if I wanted to join in to that while he was singing it. I was like, hell no, bitch!
That was not... Okay, you know that was not what I meant. Okay. For the record...
I made you look bad.
For the record, I didn't ask him to join me singing, because I knew that was going to not turn out good. It doesn't. I was asking him to join me...
Matthew does not sing.
No, I know, I can tell. But, I was trying to get him to join for, like, audience participation, because the movie we're talking about, is the Rocky Horror Picture Show on Season 2 of Movie Mumbles, and yeah.
Movie Mumbles. You know what? Because we're on Season 2, we should probably introduce what Movie Mumbles is, because we might, I don't know,
okay.
people that have never watched a Movie Mumbles before.
I don't know why you start...
How dare you?
I don't know why you start with Season 2, but okay. So yeah, Movie Mumbles... Movie Mumbles is the podcast that me, Roy Johnson, and my pal, Mr. Womble, we just pretty much... It's like a book club. We pick a movie that we watch, and we have to watch it and discuss it for like about 30 minutes. And the movies are separated into themes, which 4 movies that we take turns picking, relating to some kind of genre or category or something. And for this first theme of Season 2, we decided to pick movies from a randomly generated year. Now, explain this in They Live Movie Mumbles, but essentially, I went to random.org, which was this random number generator site, and randomly selected a year from 1920 to 2016, and the year that we picked was 1975, and for the first movie of the 1975 year theme thing that we have to pick movies from, I picked the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and we're going to be talking about that for this one. So yeah, I know you've had experience with the musical. Why don't you talk about that for a bit?
I have. Okay, so as usual in Movie Mumbles, I try and stay away from anything else that... because we've done musicals before. We did a whole genre of musicals, and one of them was one of my favorites, and that was
Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney Todd. Yeah. So I'm going to have the same rules. So I'm going to try not to talk as much about the actual musical, because there are a lot of different reasons why I go and see it. It's very different every single time, because there's a lot of audience participation, which is kind of why Roy wanted put me on the spot like 5 minutes ago. I was like, hey, do you want to join in with the thing? And I'm just like, no.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like, the audience participation and all that stuff is a big part of the appeal of Rocky Horror, and I do want to talk about it.
It really makes the show, but because I wasn't really prepared for it, I was like, maybe not.
Yeah, but what do you know, your experience with the play and all that stuff?
So pretty much, it's an event. So you go pretty much dressed in drag. You take a load of props with you, so you take like flashlights, and there's moments when you can use like the flashlights during the play without giving too much spoilers away, because it's definitely more of an experience.
Oh, speaking of spoilers,
just so we're clarified, I haven't actually ever dressed up going to Rocky Horror.
Okay.
I do go with friends that do dress up though.
Okay.
But I do take props, and I do involve myself in the story. And you know, it's just a really nice, cool night out. That I go with a lot of different friends, and it's became a cult at this point. So every single, more or less, Halloween, this showing will be on, and you go and watch it. And it's basically a pantomime outside of pantomime seasons. Now, if you're not if you're not aware of what a pantomime is,
with obscure words that no one knows about.
Pantomime. Pantomimes are huge in the UK. Basically, they happen around the Christmas time. They're essentially just really bad comedies. I wouldn't even call them comedies. And it's like Jack and the Beanstalk kind of fairy tale stories where you go and watch something happening. There's always a dame, which is like a fat man dressed as a woman. There's always a villain. There's always like the cute couple that always make it in the end. So that's Jack and whoever.
No, Brad and Janet. You're fucking up already. Okay, but it's Brad and Janet.
But anyway, like it's very much like a pantomime, but a lot darker, and it has a lot more social ties.
Speaking of which,
story.
So before we continue, spoilers ahead, because we mentioned spoilers, but you didn't bring a spoiler warning. Spoilers ahead for the rest of this podcast. We're going to be going in depth about this movie. And I'd heard you were talking about it being a cult thing, and I think you're very, very downplaying it, because it is the most popular cult film of all time.
Probably,
it was released in theaters in 1975, and it technically has not stopped running in theaters, because theaters are still playing this movie to this day.
In America.
Well, yeah, but it's still a big deal. It's still like one of the longest running theatrical movies of all time. And it's just the big cult environment it's so big for this movie. Like you said, audience participation is a big part. There are several screenings of the movie where people just make jokes in between the movie's numerous pauses, and then they have props to interact with it. It's been done before with movies like The Room and stuff, but it's never been quite as big as Rocky Horror, and I think it's the one that started it, although I'm not 100% sure about that.
As terms of audience participation, it probably isn't. Film-wise, maybe, I'm not sure, but definitely theatre-wise, it definitely 100% isn't, because, like I said, pantomimes, they've been around for years and years and years, and that's where, as far as I'm aware, the musical stage play that came first, that was developed around a pantomime. So there's always singing in the pantomime, there's always dancing, there's always a silly cow that's dressed up as two men kind of thing.
I know you're going.
There's always a lot of audience participation, like he's behind you, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So
maybe maybe for film, I'm mainly talking about film for this instance of audience participation, but I'm pretty sure there's more before that.
I don't think there is much audience participation in this film. That's
wrong.
One thing
You're
that
right
I'm not so keen about this actual film. Because there isn't really... You can't interact with the film while you're watching it. You can't use your props. You can't really dress up. So I think that's why there isn't that many cinema screenings of this in the UK, because I actually looked into this, because I did wonder, because it's huge on the stage still. Like, every year an amateur dramatics group will be doing it locally for me.
Okay, so listen...
Then you also get the professional runs that go every year as well.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Let me just explain before you continue. Usually for these screenings, they usually have a bit of a shadow cast thing where they have the movie playing in a projector, like in the background, but they also sometimes have actors like doing the play, but like kind of playing along.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, that's usually how some of these productions, most of these productions usually go.
Again, that's more of an American thing. That's definitely an American thing. I don't actually know of anywhere locally, at least for me.
Okay, I know
that sort of stuff happen.
We could spend most of the podcast talking about how audience participation is a big thing, but
definitely.
We should probably more talk about the movie now, because we haven't actually talked about it.
Okay, so basically what happens in the movie... Actually, before we do go into that, I just want to do full disclosure. I do like this movie. I like a lot of things about it. I like a lot of the social points that it makes. However, it hasn't aged well. And with that in mind, just be very aware that I might hit on this a little bit harder than I normally would on films. But I generally do like this film. Like, it was very enjoyable to watch, and I really like the atmosphere for it.
Okay.
So we start off with two lovebirds, Brad and Janet, who are at a wedding. Janet catches the bouquet, and then there's this whole Brad and Janet duet where Brad asks Janet to marry her, and they're all happy and whatever. And then they go driving, and then their car breaks down, and then they find this big, massive house of Dr. Frankenfurter, which is a play on Dr. Frankenstein.
No, and Frankfurters, because...
Yeah. Frankenfurter. Yeah,
They call him a hot dog in the movie. So.
It's a play on a lot of different things. It's quite clever. It's British humor as well because it's all it's a British play. It's almost a British film. It was the screenwriters, I believe. One of them's Australian, one of them's British. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's British, but it was made in America. I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think we got the first release date though. But anyway, in this house of Dr. Frankenfurter's, there are all whole levels of abominations. Well, not abominations, but
wacky
Dr.
guests,
Frankenfurter's designs. Because if you think about it, Rocky is Frankenfurter's designs. So then you've got to think that all the other people at the party, they're also Frankenfurter's designs and creations.
I've actually heard that the guests that I know what you're talking about. The guests are actually different Transylvanians that were going around the globe. Okay. They're not like creations or anything. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. I actually no. I think you're right. I think you're right in saying that. When you're first introduced to this castle, they're made to seem like creations. But then as you go on, you find out that Dr. Frankenfurter and pretty much all of the transvestites are Transylvanians.
And they're also aliens.
Galaxy, a different world. Aliens, basically.
Yeah, because Transylvania is a real place on Earth. So
basically, it's Brad and Janet's discovery through this castle. They get stranded there, and they become very sexually active.
Yeah, this film has a lot of sexual themes in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of sexual themes, and in the 70s, they're kind of breaking through that barrier, that cultural barrier.
Yeah.
As opposed to ooh, gay, and it's kind of before the whole like AIDS thing as well of the 80s. So they're breaking through a lot of that barrier.
It was a very like free love. Well, not the 60s was more free love, but there was still like that sexual revolution going around this time.
I mean, look at any rock star in the 70s. Like they all had drag, they had makeup, they had very, very tight jeans, that sort of thing. So I say it's past the cultural thing, but actually at the time there was a lot of like drag queens going on. It was very weird for you to come out as like properly gay.
So in a way, this film is at the time. I'm gonna say at the time because we're gonna argue whether or not it's aged well. But at the time, it was kind of progressive because it was having all this kind of representation.
I think for the time, it worked. It's also a B-movie horror film as well. Just to throw that in there.
It's a straight parody. It's a goofy parody. It's not to be taken too seriously.
It is. You can tell that the cast in this film take it. Have fun in it. Because otherwise they wouldn't do it. Like, if they weren't having fun for this and they didn't believe in what was going on, they wouldn't be in it. A lot of actors at the time, this would be a career stopper. But then you look who's the main star in this, Tim Curry. Now, he's a phenomenal actor who has so many levels, and he's been in so many films. I think this was one of his first major films it wasn't even a major film, it was a B-movie.
I think this is his first major role, like major film role in general. And I want to talk about him a bit more, but first let me just talk about my own thoughts on the movie. I love musicals, and I've definitely was familiar with Rocky Horror Picture Show, long before I actually got the chance to see it. I actually did watch on YouTube a stage production of it, so I actually kind of do know like the differences between when comparing the film to the play. And there are definitely some notable differences. I will say, it is a flawed movie. I'm not going to say it's a perfect movie. There are definitely some issues with it. Not just on...
There are a lot of issues with it,
yeah,
I think.
It is kind of a messy movie, but at the same time, there is this clear charm to it. Like, it's a very, like, charming movie with some great atmosphere, and you can tell it was a lot of fun for the people to make, and that fun definitely resonates with you. And the songs, before we continue, the songs are absolutely amazing. They are, they are just super catchy.
The songs, especially, like, Time Warp, which has become such this iconic...
That's definitely my favorite song.
Iconic masterpiece. Because of this film, it wouldn't have reached that high. Like, it is literally played at every single party, like late night 40s disco kind of thing, from the 70s to the 90s. It was like when I was a kid growing up, whenever we had like discos or parties or anything like that, Time Warp would always play. It's so iconic that it has to be played at these sort of events. Not so much anymore because I think it's aged.
I remember you actually played a disco version of, I think it was Time Warp, which was definitely different from the one in the movie. I prefer the one in the movie, though. It's definitely an iconic song.
I prefer the one in the movie as well. That disco version, I believe, was recorded like 3 years later with the same guy that played, I want to say Igor, and I know his name's not Igor.
It's Riff Raff, and he's played by...
Yeah, Riff Raff, that's the one.
He's played by the director and, like, main guy behind the project, Richard O'Brien.
Yes, yeah. So he directed the cinema screening, and I think he also wrote part of the stage play. Not the stage play, he wrote the screenplay for it. He's actually kind of like, again, someone who's fairly iconic in... it's me now. I'm now saying iconic and stupid words.
Okay. But, I think, yeah, in general, I want to talk a bit about some of the ideas behind this movie, because I think a major one is obviously sexuality. I mean, the film focuses on Brad and Janet, who are just like the squeaky clean virgins, like, who are so awkwardly, like, in love. Like, you can tell from the opening Damn It Janet scene that they are in love, but there's, like, a weird, you know, like, like, awkwardness
Janet.
to it. And
actually, that is the only time where the background actors throughout this film are just play it stone dead because they are bored. It's the most boringest song out of all of them, and that's done for a reason. Because no, wait, is that Damn It Janet?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. It is Damn It Janet. Yeah, the first duet right at the beginning. It is on purpose supposed to be boring so that it sets up for this magical and wonderful world that lies ahead of these characters. Everyone around them, like the Undertakers or whatever they are, the people who are in the church, they're so bored. Like, the only two people that are generally enjoying this are Janet and Brad, and I love that. That's part of the film that is done well.
Okay, I also want to point out in that scene that there are some background characters who are obviously like Tim Curry, like Richard O'Brien, like they're obviously like the Transylvanians, and I've actually checked the shooting script. In the shooting script, those characters are actually the Reverend and the Paul. They're actually the previous character, like the alien characters in disguise, like according to the shoot script. So
yes, correct.
And there are actually some hints later in the movie that argues that when when the car crashes or like has a flat tire and they go to Transylvania, it was kind of set up because in the Sweet Transvestite song, which is another great song, Brad is explaining to Frankenfurter like they had a bad situation, and then Frankenfurter specifically says, "Oh, you were caught in the flat," even though Brad never mentions that they had a flat tire. So that's another subtle detail.
Yeah. Again, like there are moments of this film that's actually fairly clever, and there's a lot of nuances that you might miss if you weren't paying attention to it as well. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the negatives.
Okay, and okay, I'll agree. Like, it's not a perfect movie, so...
Yeah. It felt tiring. It was tiring for me to watch this.
Really?
And that's not a good thing. Yeah. I was sat there, and like, I was enjoying the songs and the music, because I know all the songs, and I know all the music, and I know all of that stuff, but I wasn't invested.
Really? Okay.
The actors, Brad and Janet, for me, and I think this is a time thing. I don't think it's aged well. I think at the time it was probably great acting or whatever. I don't know. But for me, while I was rewatching it, I was kind of bored by their acting. Like the only good actually no, there was two great performances in this. That was Tim Curry.
Yeah, I agree.
And Richard whoever directed it. Can't remember.
Richard O'Brien. Riff Raff.
Yeah. Two amazing performances by them. But then the rest, Janet, Brad, even the others like Magenta and Columbia, like I was, and then Meatloaf came along, and I'm just like, they didn't need to throw Meatloaf into here. Like they literally only did that because he was obviously a up and coming rock star at the time, or he was a rock star at the time. Actually, I'm not sure. Was he?
No, yeah. I think Meatloaf was actually part of the original like cast of the play.
Okay.
I don't think he was a big name yet.
Either way, like Meatloaf comes into it, and I think this is my prejudice because I love Meatloaf. I've watched a few films where he's in and he plays really great roles, and I know he can act. Fight Club, for instance. Like, he is phenomenal in Fight Club. But, like, he came on, and I love his music, and then he did his singing, and it's just like, for me, it didn't fit. It didn't fit with the film. And I realized that he was, if he was part of the original cast, and that's how it was originally wrote, but because I've seen it in so many different versions, the Eddie, the delivery boy, he's always portrayed so different to that, and I think I'm skewed by it. And I have watched this film before, let me just put that straight, and before it's never been so noticeable. But I think when I'm really critiquing the movie, there's a lot of supporting roles that are the weak links.
Okay, so let me just argue some of your points here. I will agree in some aspects, the acting is kind of hokey, but I'll argue a bit on that some of it's probably deliberate because they're lampooning sci-fi B movies and all that stuff, and the whole movie plays like one of those. And, those movies have hokier acting, so I think some of that plays to that, and I'm not saying that excuses, some, like, faulty performances. I'm just saying part of that might be deliberate. And before I continue, Meatloaf's character, Eddie, I can understand why you might have problems with the character, because there is a difference between how he's portrayed in the movie versus how he's portrayed in the film. And in the play, he's more of a...
Wait, did you just say how he's portrayed in the movie and how he's portrayed in the film?
Yeah, okay, whatever, shut up. But yeah, shut up. But my point is, like, Eddie in the play was slightly more prominent. He didn't have too many extra scenes, but there was stuff there that, in the film, he literally...
It wasn't just, like, one cameo scene, if you know what I mean, yeah. And that's the same with a lot of the stage plays that I've seen live. I haven't actually seen anything on YouTube, so I don't actually know if there are things knocking around. I've only ever seen it live a couple of times.
Okay.
About 4 or 5.
In the film, though, like, he literally just pops out of nowhere. He does have some plot significance, but mostly that's just, like, relating to, like, Dr. Scott and, like, Rocky, who, by the way, Rocky is also, I think, one of the bigger flaws of the character of the film, because he doesn't...
Yeah. I'm actually going to come to Rocky later, because I do have a huge problem with Rocky, but like I said, I'll come to that later. I'll do that towards the end. So I'm aware that Brad and Janet are intentionally played down, and I was aware of that. And you're aware of it when you go and watch it on the theatre, and that never bothers me. And in the past, it's never bothered me, but this time when I watched it, I just got bored. Whenever they were on, I was just bored. I was just like, come on, I want the Frankenfurter bits. You want the good Tim Curry, solid acting parts where he's not just taking it as a joke. I don't want to say that the actor and actress who played Janet and Brad weren't fully behind it, but I don't know. I think I might have just had a bad showing. Like, it's just sometimes you watch a film and you're just like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I understand. Like
you can watch a film and then you're like, okay.
You weren't in the right mood or something.
But then you watch it again and then you have a completely different experience. And I just think that because we're using this as like a book club, I thought it was well to note that. I'm not saying that it's a bad film at all. I'm not saying that they're bad. It's just that I wasn't enthralled by that when I watched it this time.
I think I had a slightly similar experience with Inside Out. Not to this extreme. I didn't hate Inside Out, but have more problems with it. But I do agree. I think this could just be like, this was just like you were not in the right mood when watching it.
Just like a bad viewing kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought it was important to note that.
Okay.
Because,
okay.
like.
No. That's fair.
Like, we're not reviewing the film. We're kind of, it's like a book club. So that was a problem that I generally had. Okay, let's go on to Rocky Horror, because...
Yeah, okay, so Rocky Horror is, the title character, but he's the creation of Frankenfurter, and he's like this big, muscular sex object for most of the characters. And, he's kind of he's Frankenstein's but handsome,
monster, basically.
But super handsome.
No, Frankenstein's monster. Dr. Frankenstein is the scientist who created Frankenstein's monster.
I'm not saying...
So he's Frankenstein.
Yeah, but he's super handsome and, like, rock solid instead of just ugly and, like, corpsey.
Which in its way, in itself, is actually incredibly funny.
Yeah.
Because it's the contrast, they're taking the mick out of Frankenstein. There's a lot of Frankenstein moments in this.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
They're very self-aware of that.
Yeah.
His character never progresses.
No, I'll agree with you. His character in the movie is not much of a character. Like, there's some aspects that come out when he sings, but the main problem is he sings twice, and he never speaks throughout the movie. He turns from in the first time he appears, he sings this full song and he's capable of speech and doing all this stuff. And then the moment he stops singing, he's like this stupid, like, childlike character who's like banging on stuff and like just a total imbecile.
Yeah.
And I know the reason why this change happened was because the actor who played Rocky Horror could not act and he could not sing. Instead of casting someone else for whatever reason, they decided to keep him with his sexy body, but he doesn't sing and he doesn't act at all. And his singing was dubbed by a different actor or singer completely.
Yeah, exactly. And he doesn't have any character progression whatsoever. Like, none whatsoever.
And that's different from the play, because in the play, he's an actual character. There's this big deal made about how Eddie and him, you know, because they mention in the movie, but it's not as big of a deal in there, that half of Eddie's brain is in Rocky. So they have more of a connection, especially during Batui. And that's not in the movie as much at all. And there's also...
It's not... I don't think it's in there at all. I don't think those moments that... It's kind of the moments that I kind of cherish from the film, from the theater
play,
as well.
yeah.
I just don't...
I don't
think it's...
there is a tiny moment, but there's a tiny moment where they look at each other, but it's so subtle that it's not even... Yeah, I agree. And Rocky in the play is more of the traditional Frankenstein narrative where he's like, oh, woe is me, which is dealt with in the first song, like, oh, what is my creation, blah, 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 like this whole, like, existential crisis.
And that's important. You need that in this film, because this film is all about role reversal, gender reversal.
Yeah.
So all the normal characters, like the Frankensteins and the guests and everything like that, and even Janet and Brad towards the end, they become transvestites. They go cross-dressing, they all wear women's clothes, that sort of thing. Rocky Horror is a creation that becomes the masculinity of what society today is supposed to be viewed as, or even in the 70s. So he's this hunky, very testosterone man. So the fact that he doesn't fit in with the Transylvanians,
it's kind of ironic.
It makes sense, and it's a complete role reversal, but you don't get that in the film, and that's an important, integral part of the story, and it's something that I really honestly feel is missed, just for a bunch of cheap jokes.
Also, because Rocky doesn't speak, he doesn't get to say the punchline to the Brad, Janet, Dr. Scott scene, because the punchline, the original punchline in the movie was they keep repeating Brad, Janet, Dr. Scott, Brad, Rocky, and Rocky's silent for two of them, and then at the third one he's like, piss off. Like, Rocky says piss off to, like, stop the whole thing. And that's not in the movie. Like, it's still a funny scene.
Yeah, exactly.
It's still a funny scene, but it's, like, it's more funny in the play, because Rocky actually speaks.
Yeah.
But, I do agree. Like, Rocky is a flawed character, and I do think that's one of the main issues of the movie.
It's the supporting cast, and I don't like to knock on actors. I really don't, because 9 out of 10 times it's really not the actor's fault that something goes wrong. Usually with movies, there's a whole team and there's a whole collection of people that are putting this film together, and the actors are just the front part. So when a movie bombs, it shouldn't just be on the actor's shoulders.
Yeah.
But I'm fairly confident that it isn't the actor's fault, and I'm fairly confident it's not even the director's fault. I just think it hasn't aged well. I think it's time's fault, and that's why, for me, watching it this time, like I've got to judge it on what I've seen this time. It just hasn't resonated as well as what it has in the past. So maybe I was just having a bad day.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the dated aspects of this movie, because, you know, at the time this was kind of progressive and it reflects a lot of 70s sexual revolution ideals, but obviously some of those...
Janet's a slut.
And Brad's an asshole. They are actually, like, genuinely awful, like characters, but I think
both of them are the worst characters.
But
Brad
I think that's part of the fun. That's part of the fun of it.
It is part of the fun.
Okay, but anyway, it's the portrayals of, like, all of these sexually, like, characters, and they're portrayed as aliens who, like, and, like, Frankenfurter is probably the worst example, who do all these horrible things, because, like, Frankenfurter is the most explicitly, like, transsexual and, like, gender, like, sexualized character, and he commits rape on 2 occasions, and he's just, like, he murders Eddie.
Yep. And then you're supposed to feel for him at the end, in his dying scene.
Yeah.
But I honestly believe that I didn't. I like.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, I mean,
I don't know.
I feel like part of that's a bit of a parody.
It feels dated. It really does.
I think part of that's kind of parodying like those ideas.
I know it's a parody, but if you really look at it, he is a rapist, a murderer. You know, he's not a nice person. He's broken some of the laws of nature as well. You know, he's experimented on humans.
He's like genuinely. I mean, he's a great villain. I think he's a great villain. But I don't really feel too bad when he gets killed. I mean, Rocky and Columbia, I feel more bad for because they don't really do anything wrong to deserve their deaths. But for Frankenfurter, no.
But I think actually that's kind of like a very somber note, especially coming back into season 2. It's like we've kind of ended on a negative, which...
But let's talk a bit more about the positive. I feel like we should talk a bit more, because honestly,
really quickly, because we're about out of time, so...
Yeah. But I honestly, despite all of our complaining, I still think this is a great movie. I still came out of this movie really enjoying it, and honestly...
I enjoyed it.
The main thing is the plot's not really, like, you know, you don't go into it for the plot, because there really isn't that much of one. It's just more a reason to string together all these awesome songs, and the songs are definitely the highlights of this movie.
Yeah, we haven't really spoken about the songs, and the songs are the highlight of the movie. That's kind of why you want to watch this sort of thing, is for the song, for the music.
I think it's a great experience.
And like you said earlier, yeah, it's the audience participation, especially in the stage plays.
I would say watch the movie first and then go see like a midnight screening or that kind of thing. Just, to compare.
If you're into that sort of stuff.
But definitely, if you want to, I definitely recommend checking out a Rocky Horror midnight screening, because it's a completely different experience, a more fun experience. I still think the movie's good. It's not perfect. It's still got its flaws.
It's fine.
But it's, I like it.
I enjoyed it. It's not my favorite of the films that we've watched on Movie Mumbles, but it's definitely not the worst.
No, not at all.
So that's something. It's somewhere in the middle. I think it's kind of like middling ground.
I think I like the movie more than you do right at this moment. But I think
I just think I had a bad experience.
Probably.
I think it just wasn't my day to watch. I think also I've had a long time to reflect it. So usually what I do, I will watch a film and then immediately record, but we kind of had to put it off this time because of scheduling and stuff.
Yeah, it was complicated.
So I've had a lot of reflection, and I think the moments that I was thinking in the film, I've kind of forgotten a lot of the good thoughts, and when I write down my notes, I've actually not lost my notebook, by the way. So I've kind of had to go off the memory. So I don't know. I think it's just a bad viewing for me personally.
Okay.
You know what I mean by, like, every time you watch a film, it feels different. Like, you never get the same feelings from it unless it's a really, really great film.
I agree.
You never get. I think I think
we can both agree we recommend this movie. I think we recommend you check it out.
Yeah. I'd recommend it. However, having said that's the end of the Rocky Horror Show. Which is the first part of our Movie Mumbles. Do you have anything else to say? I was
just gonna say, like, I don't think the flaws are bad enough to ruin the experience. I think, or at least, I feel like most people will get a lot of enjoyment out of this movie.
No, I'll agree with that. And like I said, it is a good film, and I do enjoy it.
Okay, but now let's get. Let me lower my levels a little bit. I don't know. I was peaking red at certain points. Anyway, let's get on to your pick, Womble. I can't wait to see, because 1975 is a great year of movies. Honestly,
we were lucky. Year for movies.
We were really lucky with it.
Okay, so you say that Rocky Horror Show is an American film. I disagree. I say it's a British film. It is very much British in creation. It is pretty much filmed in the majority. I think it's switched between. I'm not sure, actually. That's something that you need to look up and post in the edit. But I believe
it was filmed in British land.
It's filmed in British land. Yes, exactly. Okay. But it is a British creation, and it is kind of a comedy. Like, it's funny in places.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Very funny.
I think I know where you're going with this.
So I'm going with something that's even funnier and something that's even more astounding.
I know it.
There are a group of pythons that did a whole TV series for a very long time in the UK, and yes, you guessed it, Roy, and yes, everyone else has probably guessed it. I'm going with Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
You know what? Yeah, I was
umming and ahhing whether I would pick this next, because I wasn't sure if you were going to pick it.
I'll be honest, that was probably, if you hadn't picked it, I would have, honestly.
Okay, yeah, exactly. That's why I wanted to pick this one. I really wanted to pick this one.
Smart decision.
This is one of my favorite films. It is way before its time. Like, visual comedy-wise, there's so much, there's so much going on in this. Have you seen this, Roy?
I'm not familiar with the Monty Python's work, so I haven't seen this movie.
Have you, but you haven't seen this film?
No.
Excellent. This is probably, in my opinion, this is the best Monty Python film. And that includes The Life of Brian.
Okay.
And The Life of Brian is probably the most famous one. But I love The Holy Grail.
Okay.
And I was so happy when I found out that we were doing 1975, because I get to pick one of my favorite films.
I know you're excited.
Yeah, that's what we're going to go and watch next.
Okay. I know Womble's excited. I'm actually kind of interested too. I'm not
really excited by this. I'm not going to watch this just once. I'm probably going to watch this like 3 times.
Okay. Okay.
This should be the cult classic that Rocky Horror Picture Show is, because I'm pretty sure it is. It's a cult. I'm not to this extreme, brilliant. But I think it's a cult classic. Monty Python as themselves are a cult classic, but I don't think The Holy Grail is. The Holy Grail is underrated. It's The Life of Brian that is the one that's watched all the time.
I'm not 100%. I'm not sure about that, but well, yeah. Okay, so anyway,
I am. I'm 100% sure. Like all the song, the song right at the end of The Life of Brian, like that's a classic, iconic thing. That's something I've got on my ringtone. If someone texts me, like, it's something I have.
Okay.
On my phone all the time. And The Meaning of Life, which is the 3rd film, which is probably the worst film in my opinion, that again has like a really, really important song, and like the Galaxy song, just remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving and revolving at 900 miles an hour.
Okay.
But The Holy Grail is the best film out of the 3, and it is my pick. And now it's your choice.
Your chance.
To go and watch this. Go and watch this, and then come and join us in a week or so, or whatever. Whatever it is between takes.
Yeah, so that's it for the first episode of Season 2. I think we had a good start, and hopefully the rest of this theme is just as awesome. So we picked a good year, so let's get things right.
We have picked a good year. I've got like another 2 picks that I want to watch, and I'm really hoping that you pick one of them.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Okay, but any last thoughts before we close off?
No, I am honestly not wearing a bra right now.
Let's do the time warp again. But seriously, what the fuck, Womble? What the fuck?
Later, nerds.
What?